The muffled voices from the locker room stall shattered the quiet hum of the gym. Poor Frank, he's got no clue. Eleanor's been with Dale Peterson for months. My gym bag hit the damp tile floor with a sickening thud, the sound echoing the sudden emptiness in my chest. Mitch and Randy's heads snapped around, eyes wide, revealing everything. She was insatiable, Dale had bragged. Said Frank was always too tired. She needed a real man. The last clang of the free weights had faded. Sweat still slicked my skin. It was late, past 10, and the gym was mostly empty, just the hum of the ventilation and the distant splash from the pool. I pulled on a fresh shirt, the cool cotton a welcome change. Mitch Evans and Randy Carlson were in a stall around the corner, their voices muffled but clear enough in the echoing space. I hadn't even noticed them. They were both insurance adjusters, junior to me, though Mitch had been around for a while. Poor Frank, Mitch said, his voice low, a conspiratorial edge I'd never heard from him before. He's got no clue Eleanor's been with Dale Peterson for months. The words hit me. My gym bag, half zipped, slipped from my grasp. The heavy canvas thudded against the wet tile floor, a sound too loud for the quiet. It drew their attention. I heard the sudden silence from their stall, the sharp intake of breath. My hand instinctively went to the small towel tucked into my waistband, wiping at nothing. I took a deep breath, adjusted the towel, and stepped around the corner, feigning calm. Just me, I said, my voice steady, perhaps a shade too quiet. Forgot my watch. My eyes flicked between them. Randy, younger, looked like he'd seen a ghost. Mitch's face was a careful mask that slipped around the edges, guilt and discomfort clear in the way his jaw tightened. They both stared, mouths slightly open, caught. I walked to my locker, retrieved my stainless steel watch from the small shelf, the cold metal a familiar weight on my wrist. I turned back to them, my gaze unwavering. My wife, I stated, the words flat. And Dale Peterson? Randy nodded once, a quick, almost involuntary movement, his eyes fixed on the floor. Mitch finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Yeah, Frank, it's been about 6 months. He ran a hand over his short, damp hair. Who else knows? The question was quiet, but it hung heavy in the air between us. Randy swallowed hard. Everyone, Frank, they're not exactly discreet. The realization settled in my gut, a cold, hard knot. The knowing glances in the break room, the hushed conversations that stopped when I approached. I hadn't noticed. I had been the office joke, a punchline I was too blind to see. My chest felt tight, a pressure building behind my ribs. Dale, Mitch continued, his voice a little stronger now, as if getting it out was a relief. He was bragging about her at the Milbrook Hotel of all places. The Milbrook, our anniversary hotel, the knot twisted tighter. Said she was insatiable. Said you were always too tired. Said she needed a real man. The words were a physical blow, sharper than any fist. I felt a tremor deep inside, but my face remained still. I nodded slowly. Thanks for the intel, gentlemen. My voice was even, betraying nothing. Mitch shifted his weight. What are you going to do, Frank? I looked at him, then at Randy. What I do best, I said. Investigate. The drive home was a blur. The familiar streets of Elmwood slid past, streetlights painting fleeting streaks across the windshield. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. The anger, a slow simmering heat, was beneath the shock. Waiting, it was cold outside, but my skin felt hot. Halfway home at a stoplight, I pulled my left hand from the wheel. The gold wedding band felt heavy, foreign. I slipped it off and dropped it into the cup holder. It made a soft, hollow clink against the plastic. The porch light was on. I saw Eleanor through the living room window, moving between the kitchen and the dining room, setting the table. She wore a blue sweater. For a moment, she looked just as she always did, mundane and familiar. Then the front door opened. Sarah, our daughter, ran out, her blonde braid bouncing. Daddy! I forced a smile, stooping to catch her. She smelled like soap and warm milk. Her small arms wrapped around my neck, and for a second, the world felt steady. Eleanor appeared at the doorway, a casual smile on her lips. Hey, you're late tonight. She walked over, her hand brushing my arm. She leaned in, a familiar scent of vanilla and something else. Something I couldn't place. Her lips met mine. A quick, dry touch. It felt like a betrayal. Every fiber of me recoiled, though I stood still, letting her pull away. Long one, I murmured. Need a shower. I moved past them, towards the bathroom, the water already running, a hiss and a gurgle as it heated. The scalding spray was a relief, then a penance. I stood under it, letting the heat prick my skin, a futile attempt to wash away the truth that clung to me, thick and insistent. I stepped out of the shower, the steam clinging to my skin, doing nothing to wash away the cold, hard lump in my gut. Eleanor was in the living room, perched on the edge of the sofa, paging through a magazine. The lamplight caught the highlights in her blonde hair, the curve of her neck. 15 years, 2 children, a house in Elmwood with a respectable lawn. Yet, looking at her, she was a stranger. Her casual posture, the easy way her hand rested on her thigh. It was all a lie, a carefully constructed illusion I had lived inside. I walked past her without a word, heading for the kids' rooms. Sarah was already asleep, a small, still form under her dinosaur quilt. Billy, 5, was still awake, his eyes wide. "Story, Dad," he mumbled around his thumb. I sat on the edge of his bed, the worn spine of Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel familiar in my hands. My voice was steady, the rhythm of the words a comfort, a shield. I tucked them in, kissing each forehead, the scent of their clean hair, their innocent sleep, a sharp contrast to the deceit curdling inside me. I was playing a part, the unsuspecting husband, the devoted father. For them, I would hold it together. Back in the master bathroom, the mirror reflected a man I barely recognized. The face was mine, the faint lines around the eyes, the slight stubble, but the eyes themselves held a grim determination I hadn't seen before. The urge to storm out, to shatter the fragile peace of the house with accusations, was strong. My hands balled into fists, then slowly relaxed. No, that wasn't my way. Confrontation now would only lead to denials, tears, and a messy breakdown. I was an investigator. I dealt in facts, in evidence. This would be methodical, thorough, devastating. Eleanor was in bed when I finally entered our room, propped against the pillows, reading. She glanced up. "Rough day?" she asked, her voice soft. "Want a back rub?" The offer sent a shiver of revulsion down my spine. The thought of her hands on me, after knowing what I knew, was repulsive. My stomach clenched. "No thanks," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "Just tired." She shrugged, unfazed, turning a page. "Sarah was asking about the water park again. Maybe next month, like we're still a real family." The last words were almost a whisper, a casual suggestion, yet they carried a strange, passive-aggressive weight, as if she was testing the waters, hinting at the cracks she knew were there. "Sounds good," I said, pulling on sweatpants and an old t-shirt. "We'll plan something." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but my resolve hardened. I would plan something. Something she wouldn't see coming. I lay awake for hours, the hum of the old refrigerator downstairs the only sound besides my own measured breathing. My mind worked, calculating, sifting through possibilities, forming a plan. It was cold, precise, like drafting a case file. Every detail, every angle, nothing would be left to chance. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about knowledge, about exposure. The next few weeks became a masterclass in deception. I bought Eleanor flowers just because. I suggested date nights, took her to that Italian place she liked. I made love to her, the act hollow, mechanical, my mind miles away, meticulously tracking the distance between our bodies, the tremor of her breath, the emptiness inside me. I was playing the part so well she didn't suspect a thing. She smiled, she laughed, she seemed genuinely content. It only sharpened the edge of my resolve. One Tuesday, on my lunch break, I drove 20 miles to Elmhurst, a town far enough away that no one from Prairie State Insurance would recognize my car. I found a specialty electronics store, the kind with blacked-out windows and a bell that jingled too loudly. Inside, I paid cash for a high-end GPS tracker, small enough to fit in the palm of my hand. The transaction was quick, impersonal, no questions asked, just the way I liked it. Later that week, while Eleanor was upstairs bathing the kids, her laughter drifting down from the bathroom, I went to her SUV. The garage was dim, smelling faintly of oil and old tires. My hands moved with practiced efficiency. The tracker clicked into place beneath the rear bumper, magnetized to the chassis, tucked away out of sight. I checked it twice, then a third time. Secure. That night, after everyone was asleep, I took her cell phone from her nightstand. I'd watched her enter her PIN enough times over the years. Our anniversary date, 0723. The numbers unlocked a world. I quickly installed the phone tracking software I downloaded earlier, setting it to sync to my burner phone. It was surprisingly easy. A few taps, a hidden icon, and then back to her nightstand. Then came the microphones. Tiny things, bought online, untraceable. One in her car, tucked deep into the passenger side visor. Another painstakingly into the lining of her favorite purse. The last, the hardest, went behind the headboard of our bed. As I secured it, the wire thin and almost invisible, I felt a distinct line being crossed. A moral boundary. But the need to know everything, every detail, every casual word, overshadowed it. Had Dale been in our home? In our bed? I needed to know. I would know. The surveillance began. My burner phone, kept hidden in my office drawer at home, became a constant source of incoming data. Call logs, text messages. At first they were innocuous, quick exchanges about work, mundane details. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, the tenor shifted. Thinking of you, from Dale. Can't wait, from Eleanor. The intimacy escalated, a slow poison seeping into the ordinary. The phone calls were harder to listen to but more revealing. Code words, coffee run for a clandestine meeting, project update for something far more personal. Secret meeting places, discussed in hushed tones, the details precise, and then the grievances. Eleanor talking about me, my perceived shortcomings. He's just so tired all the time, Dale. Never any energy for anything. Or, he's so predictable, like clockwork. Each word was a tiny shard piercing deeper. The bedroom microphone, a thin, almost invisible line behind our headboard, picked up her complaints in the quiet hours after I'd pretended to fall asleep. Her murmurs into the phone, the soft sighs, confirmed the words Mitch had overheard. She discussed private details of our marriage with Dale, things only she and I should have known. The frequency of our love life, my habits, my moods. It was an invasion, a public broadcast of our private world, amplified for her lover. I started noticing a pattern in her alibis. Book club, she'd say, pulling on her coat, a bright, unconvincing smile. Or yoga class, as she grabbed a porgat. I'd nod, offer to watch the kids, play the part of the obliging husband. All the while, my mind was elsewhere, cross-referencing. The GPS tracker was relentless, precise. It mapped her movements with chilling accuracy. After dropping the kids off at school, she wouldn't always go straight home. Instead, she'd often head to a specific apartment complex on the other side of town, or a secluded park just off County Road 31. My investigator's mind clicked into gear. I cross-referenced the apartment address with Dale Peterson's employee file, accessed from my work computer under the guise of an overdue audit. Dale's apartment, there it was, concrete, undeniable. To facilitate her movements, to give her the rope she needed, I started taking business trips. A conference in Chicago, a client meeting in Indianapolis. Fake bookings, carefully arranged, giving her the illusion of freedom. Each time I left, I felt a knot of dread and perverse anticipation. I knew what she would do, and I would have the evidence. My dossier grew, a thick file organized and precise. Dates, times locations, transcripts of phone calls, screenshots of text messages. The cold, hard facts laid out in black and white. It was my job, my training. I built cases. This was the most important case of my life. One recording, timestamped late one Tuesday night, while I was supposedly in Chicago, caught Eleanor discussing the children with Dale. I do feel guilty sometimes, she murmured, her voice softer than usual, about Sarah and Billy. They adore Frank. Then a sigh. But they'll be fine. They adapt. We can't let them hold us back, can we? The words were casual, dismissive. It was a cold splash of water, extinguishing any lingering hope that she might have been struggling, torn. She had made her choice and her children were an afterthought. I learned the full extent of their corporate affair, the hushed whispers in the cafeteria, the knowing looks in the hallways. My colleagues, my friends had known, had watched me the oblivious husband while Eleanor and Dale carried him under their noses. The humiliation burned, a raw, angry wound that festered with every new piece of evidence. The pain had shifted. The initial shock had given way to a deep, burning resentment. I watched Eleanor interact with Billy and Sarah, the way she helped Sarah with her homework, patiently explaining fractions. The way she tickled Billy until he shrieked with laughter. The loving mother, the gentle touch, the warm smile. How could these two women exist in the same body? The betraying wife, cold and calculating, and the nurturing mother. The dissonance was almost unbearable. But I maintained my composure, my poker face fixed. The investigation continued. The pressure inside me was building, a slow, steady burn. I needed an outside perspective, a confirmation beyond the cold data. I sought out Susan, a senior analyst who had worked with me for years. She was discreet, sharp, and had a knack for knowing the unspoken currents of the office. Susan, I began one afternoon, leaning against her cubicle wall, keeping my voice low. Hypothetically, if there were rumors about someone in the office, something sensitive, would you know? She looked up, her glasses perched on her nose. Her gaze was direct. Depends on the rumors, Frank. People talk. After a pause, she added, Are we talking about Eleanor? The question hung in the air, a bell confirming what I already knew. I nodded once. Susan sighed, pushing her chair back. Yeah, Frank, everyone knew. It's been an open secret for months. She hesitated, her eyes softening with a flicker of pity I hated. Dale, he's got a reputation. Always has. You were just not paying attention, I guess. That detail, Dale's reputation, was another bitter pill. I, the lead investigator, had been oblivious to the most obvious of clues. The blind spot was immense. A few days later, I sat across a large mahogany desk from Mr. Davies, a divorce attorney known for his meticulous approach. I slid my thick binder across the polished wood. Here, Beth, I said, my voice flat. Everything. Davies, a man with a thinning gray hair and an air of quiet authority, opened the binder. He flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing as he read the transcripts, examined the GPS logs, the call records. He whistled softly. Mr. Miller, this is remarkably thorough. I haven't seen this level of detail outside of corporate espionage cases. He looked up, his expression grave. This is very strong evidence for infidelity. But I need to warn you, emotionally, this will be grueling. And with children involved, custody will be a primary battle. I want full custody, I stated, the words firm, leaving no room for negotiation. Billy and Sarah will be with me. The thought of them being exposed to Dale Peterson, to Eleanor's choices, was intolerable. I would protect them, whatever the cost. From that day, I began to distance myself emotionally from Eleanor. The effort of maintaining the facade became almost unbearable. My patience wore thin. Our conversations grew shorter, more superficial. My answers to her questions were clipped, distracted. Eleanor, after a while, noticed. Frank, she said one evening, as I stared blankly at the TV. Is everything okay? You seem distant. Work, I deflected, rubbing my temples. Big case, stressful. The lie came easily, a well-worn path. She accepted it, or at least pretended. At work, Dale Peterson remained his usual smug self. He'd catch my eye occasionally, across the break room or in the hallway, a casual nod, a slight knowing smirk. He had no idea the net was closing around him. He thought he was untouchable. I started preparing my finances, secured assets, established a separate bank account, funneling small amounts from my paycheck, building a foundation for the inevitable. The cold calculation was necessary, a shield against the coming storm. I confided partially in my older brother John, who lived a few towns over. I told him I was having marital problems, that Eleanor had been unfaithful. Not the full, sordid details. Not yet. John, always the steadfast one, listened without judgment. Whatever you need, Frank, he said, his voice gruff. I'm here. Always. His unwavering support was a small, steady anchor in the churning waters. Then came the recording that solidified everything. A conversation between Eleanor and Dale, caught by the bedroom microphone just 2 nights ago. Eleanor's voice, hushed, confident. I just need to make sure my ducks are in a row financially. Frank's investments, once those are secure for me, then I can tell him. It needs to be clean. For the kids. It wasn't just passion then. It wasn't just a lapse in judgment. It was a cold, calculated move. She was planning to use me, to bleed me dry, before discarding me. The betrayal deepened, transforming into a hard, metallic taste in my mouth. I made one final test trip. A Friday, a manufactured emergency client meeting in Davenport. I left early, my burner phone hidden, tracking her every move. She waited less than an hour after I drove away. The GPS tracker showed her heading straight for Dale Peterson's apartment. The decision was final. The confrontation was imminent. I would see her again tonight, but it would be the last time I looked at her the same way. The children were the first priority. John invited Billy for a boys' weekend, I told Eleanor casually on Thursday evening, folding laundry. Sarah can go too. They've got that big swing set and a trampoline. Eleanor frowned, a slight crease between her brows. Suddenly, what about our plans? I looked up from a pile of socks. It'll be good for them. You can catch up on your reading. I've got some work to do around the house. She acquiesced, a shrug and a murmur about my sudden domesticity. Friday afternoon, I returned home early. The office was quiet. I told my boss I had a family emergency. The house was too quiet. Eleanor was in the living room, plumping cushions, tidying the magazines on the coffee table. She wore a simple knit top, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked up, a faint smile on her lips. You're home early. Everything okay? Sit down, Eleanor, I said, my voice low without inflection. My eyes met hers. The air in the room seemed to thicken. She paused, her hand still on a throw pillow, then slowly sat on the edge of the sofa, her gaze searching my face. I walked to the coffee table, pulled a small black digital recorder from my pocket, and placed it gently on the polished wood. I pressed play. Eleanor's voice filled the room, intimate, soft, caught in a hushed conversation. Then Dale's, gruff and familiar. Can't wait to see you tonight, honey. And her reply, me too, Dale. Frank's off to Chicago. Just us. Her face drained of color. The faint flush that had been on her cheeks vanished, leaving her skin stark white. Her eyes widened, fixed on the small device. Frank, she whispered, her voice barely audible. What is this? I reached out and pressed stop. The silence that followed was deafening. 6 months, Eleanor, I said, my voice like gravel. 6 months of lies. 6 months of sneaking around. I walked over to the armchair, pulling out the thick binder from my briefcase. I opened it on the coffee table, a meticulous display of betrayal. Printouts of text, screenshots of call logs, GPS coordinates highlighting her routes to Dale's apartment, transcripts of conversations. The Milbrook Hotel, I continued, each word a hammer blow. Our anniversary spot, Dale calling you insatiable and bragging about it to my colleagues. Her eyes darted across the pages, then up to my face. She tried to deny, a choked sound in her throat. No, Frank, you don't understand. Then she tried to justify. It meant nothing, Frank. It was a mistake. I was lonely. You're always so busy, so distant. Her voice was rising, a desperate, thin wail. Then she pleaded, tears beginning to stream down her face, glistening tracks on her pale cheeks. Please, Frank, I'm so sorry. Please, forgive me. I stood firm, unyielding. It meant enough, I said, my voice chillingly calm, to discuss our kids, our home, and your plans to leave. Your plans to secure your financial future before you told me. That's what it meant. I pulled out a separate document, crisp and official, from a legal folder. My attorney prepared these. I slid the divorce papers across the table. I want full custody. You'll get supervised visitation. That's it. A guttural scream tore from her throat. It was primal, shocked, enraged. You can't do this, she shrieked, jumping to her feet, her hands clenching into fists. You'll ruin me. I'll have nothing. My gaze was steady, unwavering. You did that yourself, Eleanor. I just exposed it. I pointed to the front door. Pack a bag. You're not staying another night under my roof. I want you gone by the time the kids come home tomorrow. The house felt cold, even colder than before. It's moments like these, when lives unravel, that we truly see the cost of our choices. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. Eleanor stared at me, her chest heaving, tears still streaming. I won't leave, she spat, her voice laced with venom. This is my house too. You can't just throw me out. She stood her ground, arms crossed, daring me. I met her gaze, my own unwavering. Legally, Eleanor, I can't force you, but emotionally, I'm asking you to go. For tonight, for the children's sake, if nothing else. When she remained defiant, her jaw set, I calmly picked up my phone. I'm calling the police, I stated, my thumb hovering over the dial icon. I'll explain there's a domestic disturbance, infidelity, volatile situation. Her eyes widened further, a flicker of panic cutting through her rage. She knew what that would mean. The neighbors would see, the official record. But she still wouldn't move. I dialed. The dispatcher's voice was clear, crisp. I explained the bare facts, keeping my voice even, rational. My wife is refusing to leave the marital home after admitting to a long-term affair. There's no physical violence, but the situation is very tense. We have 2 small children who will be returning tomorrow. Within 15 minutes, 2 patrol cars idled at the curb, their lights off. Officer Ramirez, a stout, calm woman I vaguely recognized from a neighborhood watch meeting, and her younger partner entered. I explained, showing them the divorce papers, the general outline of the situation. Eleanor, now subdued, teary, stood by the mantelpiece. Officer Ramirez spoke to us both, separately, then together. Ma'am, she advised Eleanor gently, given the circumstances, and with children involved, it would be best for you to leave for the night. You can retrieve more belongings with an escort tomorrow, or once things have cooled. Humiliated, defeated, Eleanor finally nodded. She walked past me without a word, collected a small duffel bag from our bedroom, and left. Her parting shot hissed, "You'll regret this, Frank. I'll make you pay." Her old sedan's taillights disappeared down the street. The moment she was gone, I called a locksmith. An hour later, all the exterior locks were changed. The finality of the clicks resonated through the empty house. The next morning, when I picked up Billy and Sarah from John's, I kept my voice steady, reassuring. Mommy just needed some time away to think, guys, I explained as we drove home. She's staying somewhere else for a little while. Sarah, 7, was quiet, her small face worried. Billy, biting it back, looked up at me from his booster seat. Is Mom coming back? He asked, his voice small. We love you very much, I said, reaching back to squeeze his knee. Both of you are safe and you are loved. I promise to explain more later when you're older. For now, it's just you and me and Sarah. We'll be a team. And the divorce proceedings began. They were brutal, public, every raw detail exposed. Eleanor's lawyer, a sharp, aggressive woman, tried every trick. She painted me as controlling, emotionally abusive, obsessed with work. She tried to claim my surveillance was an invasion of privacy, an act of stalking, but my evidence was overwhelming. Dates, times, locations, recordings of Eleanor discussing her financial plans, her casual dismissal of our children. The long-term deceit was laid bare. The corporate affair with Dale Peterson became public knowledge within Prairie State Insurance. Whispers turned to open discussion. Dale was reprimanded, demoted. His career prospects, once promising, were severely damaged. I endured the sympathetic glances, the hushed conversations, the pity in my colleagues' eyes. But I held my head high. I had done what was necessary. My focus was on Billy and Sarah. I maintained a strong, stable presence for them, cooking dinners, helping with homework, reading bedtime stories. Their well-being was my priority, my anchor. The custody hearings were particularly contentious. Eleanor fought hard to avoid supervised visitation, arguing it would traumatize the children, portray her as unfit. My attorney, Mr. Davies, methodically presented the evidence of her calculated deception, her willingness to put her own desires above the family. The judge listened, absorbed, his face impassive. The decision felt impossibly far away. The whispers started subtly, then grew into a roar that echoed through our small Midwestern community. Word of the affair and the messy divorce spread like wildfire. At the grocery store, at church, during school pickups, I felt eyes on me, felt the conversation cease as I approached. Friends took sides. Some, like John, offered unwavering support, calling, bringing meals. Others, former mutual friends, quietly shunned Eleanor, their discomfort palpable. Eleanor predictably attempted to turn public opinion against me. She played the victim, tearfully telling anyone who would listen that I was controlling, cold, and had driven her into another man's arms. She accused me of paranoia, of invading her privacy. But my actions, my quiet demeanor, and the indisputable evidence I presented in court quietly countered her narrative. My integrity as an investigator, ironically, solidified my public image. People knew me. They knew I dealt in facts. At Prairie State Insurance, the fallout continued. Dale Peterson, unable to cope with the relentless scrutiny and the sudden chill from his colleagues, resigned. He vanished from the office, leaving behind only the lingering scent of his cologne and the memory of his smug smirk. His career, I imagined, was over. Eleanor struggled. Financially, the separation hit her hard, especially after my lawyer froze our joint assets. Socially, she found herself isolated. Many of her former friends, who had once admired her vibrant personality, now saw the cracks, the duplicity. The phone calls stopped. The invitations dried up. Then came another discovery, a fresh wound. While going through our financial records with Mr. Davies, I found that Eleanor had secretly depleted a significant portion of our joint savings account in the months leading up to the confrontation. Tens of thousands of dollars gone. It was a calculated act, another layer of betrayal, solidifying my resolve for a harsh financial settlement. This wasn't just about passion. It was about greed, about her trying to secure her future at my expense, just as the recording had suggested. During one of the particularly contentious custody hearings, Billy and Sarah were interviewed separately by a court-appointed social worker. The social worker reported back to the judge, her voice neutral, professional. She described Sarah's quiet confusion. But it was Billy's innocent testimony that cut through the room like a knife. Sometimes, the social worker quoted Billy, when Dad was on his business trips, Uncle Dale would come over and stay. A pause, then she added, he called him Uncle Dale. The room went silent. Eleanor looked like she'd been struck. The judge's gaze, previously impassive, sharpened. This wasn't just about adultery. It was about bringing her lover into our home, into the children's space while I was away. It was a complete disregard for their well-being, for the sanctity of their home. This devastating testimony strengthened my case for full custody immeasurably. A few days later, Eleanor called me. Her voice was soft, fragile, utterly unlike the angry woman who had screamed at me. Frank, she pleaded, I miss you. I miss the kids. I made a terrible mistake. I can change after hyena. Please, can't we just try for the children? I listened, my hand gripping the phone, my jaw tight. I looked out the window at Billy and Sarah playing in the backyard, their laughter distant. I saw Eleanor, not the woman on the phone, but the woman on the recording, discussing our children as an obstacle. The woman who had drained our savings. The woman who had brought her lover into our bed, into our home. It's too late, Eleanor, Mom said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. The trust is irrevocably broken. There's nothing left to save. I hung up before she could reply. The judge's gavel struck, a sharp, definitive sound that echoed in the quiet courtroom. Given the demonstrated pattern of deception and poor judgment by the respondent, Eleanor Miller, in matters directly impacting the welfare of the minor children, this court awards sole legal and physical custody of Billy and Sarah Miller to the petitioner, Frank Miller. My lawyer, Mr. Davies, nodded gravely beside me. Eleanor across the room looked as though she'd been punched. The words supervised visitation followed, a heavy blow to her public image, and I imagined her maternal pride. The financial settlement, after months of painstaking accounting and legal wrangling, also favored me. The bulk of the savings Eleanor had tried to embezzle was recouped, returned to the children's college funds where it belonged. It was a victory by all legal definitions, but it felt hollow. The emotional scars ran deep, a constant, dull ache beneath the surface. My focus shifted entirely to rebuilding our home, to nurturing the fragile relationships with my children. The house felt different now, stripped bare of the pretense, ready for a new foundation. I cooked more, learned to braid Sarah's hair, helped Billy with his first grade math. Simple, everyday acts that felt monumental. Billy and Sarah struggled. Sarah grew quieter, sometimes retreating into herself. Billy, conversely, acted out occasionally, testing boundaries, his small face etched with a confusion he couldn't articulate. I provided stability, a consistent presence, a calm port in their emotional storm. There were tearful nights, questions I couldn't fully answer, but I held them close, assuring them of my unwavering love. In the quiet moments, after the children were asleep, I found myself reflecting on my own role. Had my demanding career, the long hours, my often preoccupied mind, contributed to Eleanor's loneliness? Had I become so focused on my work that I'd overlooked the slow erosion of our marriage? The questions offered no easy answers, only a persistent unease. I also grappled with the morality of my own deception, the surveillance, the hidden microphones. I had invaded her privacy, acted with a cold calculation that felt alien to the man I thought I was. Yet, it had been necessary. It had exposed the truth. It had protected my children. The moral tightrope was thin. My brother John remained a steadfast presence. He visited often, helped with repairs around the house, and listened without judgment as I slowly, tentatively, began to process the grief and anger. "You did what you had to do, Frank," he'd say, his hand on my shoulder. "For the kids. Don't second-guess yourself." I eventually sought therapy. The wounds of betrayal ran deeper than I'd anticipated, and I needed help understanding them, learning to live with them. It was a slow process, talking through the anger, the humiliation, the profound sense of loss. I saw Eleanor during supervised visitations, usually at a neutral location like a children's play center. She was a shadow of her former self, thinner, her once vibrant spirit dimmed. She tried to engage with the children, but the spark was gone. I felt a strange, uncomfortable mix of pity and lingering anger as I watched her. She had chosen her path, and now she walked it alone. I had won the legal battle. I had secured my children's future, protected them from a destructive influence. But the price paid was immense. The shattering of a family, the loss of a shared history, the permanent scarring of trust. The quiet strength I had shown during the ordeal, the methodical resolve, became a new foundation for me. It was a painful, hard-won wisdom. Months bled into a year. The raw edges of the divorce slowly, painfully began to smooth. Life, in its stubborn way, continued. Frank and the children settled into a new routine, a rhythm born of necessity and quiet determination. Mornings were a flurry of breakfast and school bags, evenings a calm predictability of homework, dinner, and stories. It wasn't the life he'd imagined, but it was their life, built brick by painful brick. Billy and Sarah, under Frank's consistent, unwavering care, began to thrive. Sarah, once so withdrawn, found her voice again in school debates and art classes. Billy, no longer acting out, channeled his energy into soccer and building elaborate Lego structures. The trauma of their parents' separation left scars, deep ones that would likely never fully fade, but they were healing, slowly, steadily. Their laughter, once hesitant, now echoed through the house with genuine joy. Frank, too, began to cautiously re-enter the social scene. It was tentative, born more of a sense of obligation than desire. He attended school functions, volunteered for a local charity drive. He felt like a ghost, observing others, still wary of connection, of the potential for pain. The trepidation was a constant companion, a quiet voice warning him against opening himself up again. It was at a local community picnic, a fundraiser for the library, that he met Emily. She was stacking paper plates at a table, her dark hair pulled back, a smudge of barbecue sauce on her cheek. She had a kind, unassuming smile and eyes that held a quiet understanding.